We would like to hear not only about the financing, but broader experiences in the region. And we have a great panel joining us here today for the last session, not the end so far, but the last session of this exciting day about international collaboration. So exploring these diverse initiatives, strategic initiatives and strategic urban developments. So contributions for the African region. For this, I will give the floor to the moderator, the coordinator of the Urban Transition Mission Center from FFG, Elli Tzatzanis-Stepanovic.
Now you got it right, Carol. Thank you so much for staying here and being here with us. It's not a great panel, it's a great panel that I have here. And I'm very honored and grateful to have you here. And we have been talking about international cooperation already in the funding dialogue. So it's not that international cooperation is separated from funding, and so we have to do it in all ways, in all facets, and with all stakeholders. And that's why we are here. So we tried, and we heard also at the World Urban Forum that the research and innovation needs to be coupled with funding, and is coupled with funding, and that's why cities need to collaborate with academia more to be successful in the urban transitions. So, and I'm very honored here now to present you the panel. We have also an online speaker, but I will start from the beginning. Amany El-Sharif, thank you very much for being here. She's Vice President at the Pan-African University. Thank you very much. Then we have Temitope Sogbanmu. Sorry if I Sogbanmu, yes. Consultant and trainer, SDG advocate at the University of Lagos. My colleague Kanak Okan, sustainable energy officer at ICLE. And last but not least, Dahlia Sabri, independent technical advisor in water resources, in water resource management, right? So it's like this. And online, I want to welcome Artur Serra. Artur, are you with us? Hi. Good to have you, and thank you very much for participating online from the Global Living Lab Network. So we will a little bit from different angles see where international cooperation is necessary, and why, and how can we put it into the urban transition context. And yeah, my first question would be starting from Amany. In your daily work in international cooperation, where do you see the needs to even more cooperate, and how can academia be more involved in the urban transition field?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Elli, for having me in this important event. I'd like to introduce myself again. I'm the Vice President of Pan-African University, and also I'm the Regional Director for North Africa for Associations of African Universities, and the previous Dean of Faculty of Pharmacy, former Dean. And also right now I am the Director of Business Incubator in the field of improving environment. During our international collaboration, the main challenges that maybe we should focus on right now is cultural diversity, even between different African cultures, and even between African cities within one country. This is a very important issue, and it is not addressed enough. Even we can see how it is not addressed in some international calls for funding, which cannot be fit for the needs of some cities in their journey for urbanization. And I always said, and everyone always said, that there is no one size fit all. So this is very important to start with needs assessment before starting our international collaboration, because maybe the givings is not fit for the needs. Also, one of the very important points I should mention is the political and bureaucratic procedures that we should go through, because sometimes we found that most of the fund during the journey didn't arrive to the benefit stakeholders, and most of it is cutting during this journey. So this is one of the most important, and I always advise international provider or funder to add something to protect the fund till it arrives to its target. And one of the most important points I would like to discuss today is the building capacity, because since this morning I heard a lot about building capacity, but actually this is not building capacity. Building capacity, number one item in building capacity is sustainability, and also the multiplication of the person who already became competent with this capacity. And what we found that when a project with X millions of whatever is the currency, the building capacity is for 60 or 100 person, and that's it. But actually, building capacity should be a sustainable and a continuous process, and like the IS poll, because otherwise, when the project will end, the capacity building will end as well. So that's why came the role of academia and the role of education system, because when you're building capacity within the academia or through the academia and using the academia, you can ensure that this capacity building will be a continuous process. Again, I always said we in universities we have three missions: education, research, and the community service. And through the three missions, we can very well building capacity. We can educate future leaders in the field of urbanization and city planners. We can implement a lot of researches on evidence basis, which is fit for each situation, because it is not the same what is useful in Europe, not useful maybe in West Africa or Sub-Sahara, and what is applicable in North Africa, maybe it is not in the East of Africa or in South Africa. And number three is the community service of the university, because university can be a bridge, a connection. They can consolidate between the funders and also between the community, because this is one of the missions of the university. This is very important mission within the universities. That's why right now we can find that there is a huge initiative and move all over not only Africa but all over the world. But let me speak about on behalf of Africa, to transform universities into entrepreneurial universities. And for Pan-African University, for example, we have a very good initiative by having entrepreneur hubs in our branch in Kenya for biotechnology, and we have an entrepreneur hub in Kenya. It is in relation with the African Development Bank, but we have another branch in North Africa, in Algeria. We have entrepreneur hub for climate change and energy and water. And we have also, by the way, Pan-African universities, we have 5 campuses all over the continent, distributed according to regional distribution. And we believe in the African Union, and we believe in the Association of African Universities, and also as academia, that entrepreneurship is the model answer for transforming all of Africa and urbanization of Africa, because you learn, you educate, and giving the methodology and the know-how for the university students and researchers who can do everything efficiently and effectively, because it is based on science basis. And maybe it will take time. But as the code said, if you would like to go fast, go alone. If you would like to go far, go together. And I think this issue should be we should think about it to go far. Maybe I will stop here and I continue maybe if there is another round. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amany. Yeah, you're totally right. We have to work together to go far, definitely. So, Temitope, you're SDG advocate, you're consultant. How do you think can we manage to build these entrepreneurial universities or to create jobs in the field of urban transformations and make this happen?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Temitope Sogbanmu. I'm an environmental toxicologist and pollution management specialist by training. I'm also a senior lecturer at the University of Lagos. So consulting is what I do on the side. And I lead quite a number of projects which actually facilitate interactions between evidence users, brokers, and producers in the environmental space. So in those capacities, I lead some global engagements like the Global Indigenous Youth Summit on Climate Change. This was co-developed by me in 2023. And so we essentially facilitate dialogues between indigenous youths across the world. And we've had 2 summits now. And I also facilitate interactions between policymakers and stakeholders in local communities. I have some current projects where we're looking at air quality management recommendations for Lagos that involves co-creation and co-design with different stakeholders. And that's really where the entrepreneurial universities in terms of academia, facilitating interaction with the publics that they are meant to impact. As we know, the world has moved from academia doing just publishing so that you don't perish to actually ensuring that your research has some impact on the society, particularly contextually. And I'm very happy that my co-panelists mentioned contextual issues. Absolutely, not just Africa, especially with the Global Indigenous Youth Summit that I co-facilitate. One of our greatest challenges and beyond the positive aspects of the summit is engaging people from very culturally diverse settings and very different language settings, especially when we are talking with indigenous people. One thing about academia is that we must recognize that the knowledge that we talk about, that we need for the urban transformations we're talking about, is not only focused within the Western type education systems. A lot of them are also embedded within our indigenous and traditional knowledge systems. For example, we have people from Morocco that talked about the water cataract systems that they've used over so many decades, and so many others from other regions of the world as well. How do we facilitate and engage these different knowledge types and the people that have these knowledge types so that we can have things that can facilitate the transformations that we want to see? One of the highlights of the SDGs, and that's why I said I'm an SDG advocate, is leaving no one behind, right? So in engaging partnerships for the goal, in having clean water and sanitation, in trying to achieve sustainable cities and communities, everyone must be involved in the conversation and the co-production, in the co-creation of the challenges, the solutions, right from the beginning. So for we researchers, most of the time, we do the work and we set the outputs out there and we just expect that there will be uptake. Unfortunately, it's no longer like that because they don't even understand what we're trying to achieve at the beginning. And it's not just academia as well. The evidence users also need to engage us. And so I said something very important, doing needs-driven, contextual needs-driven. That is what research impact and truly research that can facilitate the urban transformation we want to see should engender. So what are the contextual issues within your community or areas where you're situated? And who are the actors that you're engaging, which you would need to map and identify in co-creating these challenges or research agenda that you're looking for, and then facilitating the engagement in terms of the resources, in terms of the funds, sometimes in terms of the capacity sharing. So we hear now about citizen science and all that. So I give 2 examples. I'm currently involved in an air quality project, like I said earlier on. And what we did is that from the academia side, we synthesized evidence on air quality issues and recommendations for Lagos. And then we consulted in cooperation with pan-sectorial stakeholders, including slum dwellers. Lagos, as you may know, is one of the highest in terms of population and metropolitan city in Africa, indeed across the world. And we have a lot of urban slums. And Lagos is also the city of aquatic splendor. So it's a coastal city. We have a lot of coastal dwellers, but they're also vulnerable to climate change impact. They're also vulnerable to things around wash, clean water, sanitation, and all that. We've had some recent outbreaks, cholera and all that in these types of settings. But the truth is that we cannot design or co-produce the solutions that is well within our ivory towers without ensuring that we're co-creating what are these context-specific issues in these different areas, so that when the results come out, there is uptake and particularly there's sustainability. And what you experience is that once your funding ends, that's where the research ends. And so that point of the take up to the next level, the sustainers, is hanging. And when you don't engage these people, it's often difficult to get their trust when you have another thing to do there. But when they're involved in all of this process at the beginning, they're co-producing with you, they have a stake. And it's not just the communities, it's also the policymakers. It's also the media people who are brokering and helping us with communication. It's also the private sector who also have a stake, you know, and all of those different kinds of people. The other one is an Association of Commonwealth Universities funded project where we're trying to identify water security solutions. We'd already identified or co-created the challenges in the project last year. And this time around, we're scaling up to co-creating the solutions and the climate change vulnerabilities in a specific urban slum in Lagos as well. So, I mean, these are areas where academia can make contributions to these issues we're talking about. We can move out of our space and we can actually achieve the impact that we really want to see, which is what our research aims to start out to do at the end of the day. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you very much. If you allow, I will invite Artur, because we were talking about co-creation, and I think it's this example is very, very good. Artur from the global network of from the European network of living labs, but your network is a global net called Global Network, right? And
yes,
what are you doing?
We're just beginning. We're just beginning.
Okay, just beginning. Okay.
This is a network that is trying to do this kind of activities of open the innovation ecosystem to everyone. We think that we have in global transitions, the urbanization is one of the global transitions, but the others like the green and digital, etc. And we need to do two things. First of all, put all kind of the knowledges we have together, because we have science, technology, innovation, but also we have indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge. At the moment, these two communities are quite separated. We need to put together. And the second is putting together all the kind of institutions and actors that should participate in this kind of common transitions, like universities, companies, governments, but also civil society. This is a little bit the idea of the Living Labs. Is trying to put together knowledges and actors in order to understand that we are in an innovation moment, but innovation also in the past, some communities has developed their own knowledges, innovative, that also can be useful again as a kind of recycle the innovation of the past now in the present and in the future. We started in Europe because Europe need this kind of collaboration. I think we have a culture of collaboration. And now we are focusing on this urbanization. As you know, European Commission is doing this mission-driven orientation in smart cities. But we are beginning to work with Africa. In Africa, we are discovering this different kind of culture, a different kind of continent. And initially, we have in Tunisia, Senegal, and South Africa, different living labs, the institution working with us in the living labs. But we need to understand a little bit the context, and the context is more different because In Senegal, for example, they have this process of urbanization as the rest of Africa, but they have still have a population in rural areas. And the institution want to, in a way, combine this urban process with the rural transformation. It's not only a urbanization process, it's the transformation also of the rural areas and the communities that live in rural areas. And this is particularly evident in the area of food. More and more governments want the food sovereignty in some way. And the food is a problem, cannot be solved only by cities because they need the rural areas. It cannot be solved only by rural areas because they need the markets of the cities. And in that way, we started a project with an institution in the government of Senegal called FEDESUD, the Fondation pour l'Accès Universel aux Télécommunications. The goal of this institution is just covering the universal access to digital technologies. And universal access is also needed for rural areas. And collaboration with this institution, the FEDESUD, we understood what they want. They want to develop innovation projects that give universal digital access to the rural communities, but in the rural areas, not only in the cities, but also in the rural areas. And they want to develop living labs related with food because they need to modernize in some way with high tech the agricultural production. And from this collaboration, we have started to develop a project in 4 cities, not just in the capital Dakar, but in the 4 cities in the region of Saint Louis in the north, Dangalma and Kaolack in the center of the country, and Ziguinchor in the south, in the Casamance. Because these cities are a little bit cities, but at the same time, they are very close related with the rural areas. For example, the 2 first living labs are in Dangalma and Kaolack, that this is the very rural traditional areas related with arachid, in the peanuts cultivation. They want to transform themselves. And this is important how this connect with the urbanization process, because Kaolack is a urban center, but this is the leaves from the agricultural production of all this area. And this is a good, interesting problem, because then the urban transition, this is also the rural transition. And this is very important for Africa. And the other side, when we bring this kind of methodologies of living labs and co-creation, they say, okay, this is what we do normally in Africa communities. We work at the community level. Everyone should participate in solving the problems. That means that there is a kind of synchrony, because this idea of 4LX collaboration with the traditional community base of solving problems in Africa. And this is what is very interesting for us, how a general methodology of open innovation living labs can be adapted in different continents, different countries, particularly in Africa, connecting also with indigenous knowledge, the indigenous practice of solving the problem together. And particularly this problem of sovereignty is quite important, because it cannot be solved by cities or by rural areas. They need this kind of collaboration. And this is why they need to promote this kind of innovation ecosystem, urban and rural at the same time, supported by ICT, but solving this kind of food problem. That is a problem that is common in many countries of Africa. And this alliance between FEDESUD produced also an alliance with other ministers of agriculture, Minister of Science and Technology, but also local authorities, companies that are developing agropoles in different countries, peasants and people that work in their own lot of agriculture, but they need some training and formation. This is why we are developing different projects. This is the living lab in Kaolack. This is the office space, but also we have an agricultural part that is when the innovation is produced. And we have a network of training between all this agriculture. That is also the 3 spaces, the office, the agricultural space, and also the training. And they are beginning to emerge these kind of products and that are supported by the Living Lab on Dangalma, where women develop this kind of commercialization of their own products. And through the Living Labs, we can achieve also connection with the urban areas, and we can create in this kind of environment of innovation. This is Dangalma, this is a village. We have also a different project in the next slide that Deron are producing, essentially for commercialization of this product through the networks. Also, some IoT technologies for following the cheptel, the bashas, the animals, because we don't have closed farms in Africa. We have open spaces, and the animals go through the open spaces. You need to see where they are a little bit, and they need some control on that. And they have some technologies for irrigation. And this is interesting because you can see local universities with local authorities working in collaboration, and with this support of the government of Senegal in the area of digital technologies. And we are very excited to learn from them how this model of Living Lab can develop in Africa in itself, solving the local problems, but with a kind of a global perspective and essentially combining the urban and rural transformation. This is what we are learning in this project. Okay, we have also a scientific committee trying to connect all these universities and also entrepreneurs like the Joko Labs, trying to think about if this kind of lesson can be also connected with other African countries, how they develop their own urban and rural transitions. And finally, this has opened a lot of possibilities because we see a little bit Africa as a kind of laboratory, not to repeat mechanically what other continents like Europe is doing in urbanization only, but a kind of joint transition between rural and rural areas and urban areas. And this is interesting for us because it go beyond this dichotomy historically between the communities living in rural areas and then the cities and urban areas. For an anthropology like me, this gap between culture and civilization, historical gap that at one moment started, at the moment has less sense because we have one habitat. The planet is one habitat. We call it about one health, but then we need one habitat. And this project in Africa is opening up a lot of good ideas that we want to share with your community. This is what we are. We are just beginning to explore, going out of Europe and see, if possible, in a no-colonial way or no neo-colonial way, how we can collaborate with different cultures towards this kind of transition of the urban-rural areas.
Thank you. Thank you, Artur, very much for sharing these insights. Very, very interesting. You will be with us till the end, right? If there are questions, we will just continue with the speakers and then we will open discussion. Very, very interesting. Kanak, Clay is also very, very active in Africa. You have several initiatives. Can you give us a couple of insights? You're doing a lot, but mainly the most important or interesting ones.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Elli, and thanks to my co-panelists for the remarks. For those of you who may not be familiar with the CLAY, of course, we're a global network of local and regional governments. We work with all levels of subnational governments, and in a way, because we're a network or membership-based organization, we tend to address some of the points that were brought up already, such as the needs-based or contextualized projects. So whenever we enter into a region or a city, it's always with the support of the local government based on what they want to implement, what their community needs, and so on. So that sort of, there is that sort of buy-in when we enter a project. So I can give a couple of examples about global projects that we are implementing, usually in partnership with the European Commission, usually through the Horizon projects, and one through the German government's funding through the International Climate Initiative. And because I'm a sustainable energy officer, I'm biased to that topic. So both of these topics deal with the theme of energy, especially renewable energy, and tends to work at a local level. So we have, for example, the Smart Energy Solutions for Africa project, which is funded by Horizon. And that takes place across 9 different countries in Africa. And that is maybe the way I describe it is at the core of it is trying to test out technologies at very contextualized local settings, all related to energy uses. So, for example, off-grid solar, or like the second life use of EV batteries, or waste to energy, or produce biogas. So all these are sort of tested out in, I would say, living labs in certain cities. I think Kenya was a country that was especially interesting, so that was the main hub. Whatever lessons were learned from Kenya were then developed as they were validated and implemented in other countries. Again, each of these solutions was sort of adapted to the local needs, and that's the core of it. And to support this ecosystem, to sort of ensure that sustainability that you're talking about, there was support given to local entrepreneurs, so they can continue these learnings and build their capacities to then attract finance and continue to innovate at those levels. So that's one element. And then there's, again, we work with subnational governments, but for us, the multi-level governance component is also quite critical. So there was this these efforts to create a sort of enabling environment on the policy side as well. So each of these technologies were supported with dialogues with government officials, academia, and so on, policy recommendations to help create this environment that can help scale up these solutions. So that's the Smart Energy Solutions project. Another one which I've been closely involved with is called the 100% Renewable Cities and Regions Roadmap project. And that's a bigger international one. And again, for this, we work in Africa, we work in Kenya. So here, what we did was we wanted to help these cities develop a strategy or local roadmap towards 100% renewable energy. And so this was a more, let's say, policy or data-oriented project. So a lot of the initial foundation setting involved collecting data and trying to fill in those gaps, working with consultants who are on the ground, as well as international consultants, helping them compile that data, model the local level energy system, which often is quite tricky because of the lack of data. And then using that to ultimately help them envision what a 100% renewable system would look like. And in this case, it means not just electricity, but all energy, demand, supply, everything. So it's quite an ambitious vision, but these local governments seemed quite into it and were keen to develop these plans and see how that would play out. So as that roadmap was developed, it obviously involved a lot of consultations with the local government, academics, national governments, to sort of develop this vision that could ultimately be implemented. And that we supported with capacity building. And most important would be the development of bankable projects, because as you said, once the funding runs out for these projects, it sort of stalls. So the idea was, by working with these governments to develop this project, maybe they can learn, maybe they can improve their processes, and ultimately we could find a funder to fund these projects. So that means when we sort of let go of their hand as the project ends. So trying to tie together these different components, wherever the gap is, stitch them together and work for our membership. That's a glimpse of the work I'm involved in.
Thank you. How long are these projects?
I would say 4 years, 3 to 4 years, but these are big projects, and we've had some less than, maybe 1 year max or 2 years, but these are one.
And the results are available? Are they open or will they be?
Yeah, we have websites. I'm happy to share the links later, both for the CESA one and for the renewables one. So all the knowledge products are released, publicly available.
Yeah. Our last speaker for today will come to the discussion. I will also write some. It's not working. Now it's working, right? Yeah, thank you. Dahlia, you were advisor in water resource management. In which corporations have you been involved? How do these projects or these activities look like in your city?
At the beginning, I would like to really thank you for inviting a water person to this urban forum, because usually water is overlooked a bit. So thank you very much for considering water, and this shows how important you think water is in this context. So I'm not working on. I would like just to give an oversight on what we're doing as a civil society or NGOs. I mean, a lot of already have been said on the community level, but I would like to emphasize the role of the civil society for fostering collaboration between all the key players and the local communities. For example, if as an NGO, we work on facilitating the community engagement with and raising awareness of all water-related issues. We work with women and with youth on climate smart agriculture, and we try to raise their awareness on the impacts of climate change and how they can adapt to the shortage of water in their fields, and how they can cope with the problem with losses of their crops due to the high extreme events and so on. Also, one of the things that we try to do is to build the trust between these local communities and the government officials. It's most of the time this trust is a bit unavailable, or you could say that you need to really work hard to make them trust the officials or the government officials. So we try to do a lot of workshops and bring together people from the government and these local communities representatives to build some good relation between them, and this will benefit the whole society. On the other hand, also we work on advocating water education for children. We actually work on a project that we committed on in New York for the 2023 water conference that was held after 50 years, the first conference after 50 years at the UN, and we committed as IWRA to advocate water for kids at school. So I'm working now on a project to make some cartoons for children and a short movie, just like, just to tell them not to use a lot of water efficiency, don't open the tap and leave it open, and this small stuff. So we work a lot on advocacy, which is it's very important now. Also, as you mentioned, data is very important in the water sector. I mean, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So we're trying to work on how we can get reliable data, how we can improve the water system. For now we have the Internet of Things, and we have AI and the smart water management. As I was discussing earlier, we have a project on smart cities for water management, and how we can use sensors and water sensors for leakage inside the buildings, for example, which cost a lot of money, insurance money, because if you have leakage inside the building, it will destroy your flat or something if you are outside. I worked on this also with an association in Kuwait, and it was very nice project, how we can use small detectors for the leakage and train people on how to use it at home. Of course, it costs a lot of money to install this, and this is a big barrier here in Egypt for us, because we need a lot of money to install these systems. But in some countries, they can afford it, so it's very useful. Also, leakage in the main networks, in the water distribution networks, because it costs a lot of money if you have leakage non-revenue water. I mean, if you're not aware of this term, it's like the water which is transmitted in the network, but it's lost due to leakage. So you don't use it and you lose it. So we try to have this water sensors to improve our detection for the leakage. This is one of the issues of the smart water management aspect. Yeah, well, I would say that I mean for also advocating the SDGs, that the water is an interconnecting sector. It touches all the SDGs. So you cannot fight poverty without having water. You cannot have smart urban cities without water. So it touches all the sectors, all the SDGs. So water is life, as we say. But yeah, I mean, I'll stop here. Maybe we can.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now it's working. Thank you very much for all your interventions. Yeah, we saw it. It's not easy. We have to work with very many stakeholders in very many fields. Not work in silos, but it is manageable and it is doable, right? So what do you think for the next couple of years? What do you think in your context will be the next steps or the next stakeholder you have to involve, or where are the biggest, let's say, challenges, or what would you advise other cities? Or you have come far, you have involved your stakeholders. Where can we begin, and whom to involve from the beginning? Is there a recipe for all, or are there some tips and tricks that you can or could give whoever wants to? So, and if there are questions, of course, after this short intervention, please feel free to ask them. Yeah.
Thank you for the excellent question, because I'm very programmatic and practical person. First of all, before I came here today, I didn't know about a lot of the initiatives that were demonstrated today. So my first recommendation to have a platform that include all of these activities together. Because if I will try to find the website for each one, I think we don't have the luxury of time anymore during our daily life. Then how I will search about what I don't know. So it's very important if you can take as a center this initiative to collect all the stakeholders together in one platform. You will saving the humanity. So I think this is very important. Only yesterday, we have finalized the final draft of the STISA. STISA is Science and Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa. It's a 10-year plan. And we finalized it yesterday. I worked there as expert of the African Union. And it became ready to deliver to the ministers of research and science. And the good news that the climate change is on the agenda of the STISA. Okay, so I think the platform is open now, and I can say that the spaces of urban is spaces of opportunities, and we have to use it in a proper way. Again, also, I would like to focus on some points. Most of the international players in the field of urbanization play as doers. We don't need doers. We need educators. We need coaches for the stakeholders. Because as we know that if you give me a fish, you will feed me for a day. If you teach me to fish, I can feed myself for a lifetime. So this is very important. Not to do it by yourself. Don't be proud that you did so and so and so. No, it's better to let us know how many people you are changing their style of life. This is very important to be doers. And also, the curricula. Right now, it's very important. Most of the programs, educational programs all over the world become flexible. So I recommend to start to incorporate some curricula, which is specific for urban and climate change and all related topics. And this has become very easy by the credit hour system. We have it here in Africa. Also, we are working in harmonization of higher education in Africa. It's a project between the European Union and the African Union. And we can include this recommendation for all over the higher education, not only higher education, actually, and school education as well, is very important to be included in this very important actually issue. So the context of urbanization, as my colleague said, it's multidimensional, and it's a huge platform to create and innovate, and did a lot of changes through it for the environment. And don't forget that we have what we call the Agenda 2063 of Africa, the Africa we want, which consists of 7 inspirations. One of them is the environment, because this is the main pain and the headache of for Africa. And I think I will stop here to allow other colleagues to comment on this important question.
Thank you a lot. In fact, she really reflects a lot of that. We'll certainly chat after. One, in terms of what are stakeholders that we need to engage, at least from my own experience, I think so far, although it's not quite standard in Africa here to Nigeria, but I think we're getting to have the ears of the policymakers, because they understand that we are helping to support their priority actions and their deliveries. But I think there's one key stakeholder that is still difficult to navigate, which is the private sector. They're very important evidence users. They are also very important stakeholders and players in terms of the funding and the resources that we're talking about for sustainable environment transition and transformations. International and regional multilateral organizations are critical. I like the comments that she's talked about in terms of facilitating platforms or some sort of communities of practice, and where we can exchange these ideas. I really like the presentation by Artur, and I already noted his email about what's happening in Senegal. It's just like, it's my first time of learning about that, and that is really great, especially in a rural setting. I mean, sharing this type of knowledge is so, like using knowledge exchanges, and you know, with virtual platforms now, it also makes it easier for this type of knowledge exchange to happen. To share experience and all that. So private sector is very critical. Just like the policymakers have begun to understand that in engaging with academia and engaging with different stakeholder types, we are helping each other to support the achievement of our primary objectives. It's the same thing with the private sector. We are also helping ultimately the private sector to achieve its primary objectives of optimizing profit, if they are able to understand from the different stakeholders what are the challenges and how can they co-create or co-design solutions. The private sector. I mean, now we also have PPPs and things like that. Academia also needs to learn to move out of our spaces. I think one of the things that distinguishes some of us is that we don't remain in the university because we're moving in settings like this, engaging in networks like this. Unfortunately, quite a number of us are not really good in that social aspect. And we really can't overrule that. There's some of us that are just into the books and all that. So I think other platforms where we do literally have to overcome this, like social media platforms, and maybe that could help, because we do have the repository of knowledge that the world really needs. But not only us, the world also has some knowledge that we need to enhance. So there's that need of understanding everyone's power play in this, and the need to, you know, collaborate and synthesize all of these efforts. So I would stop there. I really like the point of the sister policy. I'm a very strong advocate of the Africa we want. And the Africa we want cannot, you know, happen in silence. Right, the Africa we want cannot happen by some people feeling that their power plays here. Everybody needs to understand their role in achieving this Africa we want. And for goal 7, the priority on environmentally resilient and sustainable cities and communities. Very critical, cross-cuts with social, economic situations. In Africa, unfortunately, we have such issues. And somebody asked me earlier, I think it was my friend from the EU, about those things. And I said, while there's some level of understanding of the environmental issues that we have in Africa, there is that priority in terms of socioeconomic needs first. I need to be able to be alive first to consider my environment. I need to be able to have access to basic services, which probably are available elsewhere, for me to begin to consider those things. So, I mean, those type of conversations need to continue to happen. The brokers that can help make this more aware, communicate this wider, like media, NGOs and things like that. I mean, the cartoon thing she was talking about is fantastic, infographics and, you know, great things that we can reach out to different people, children, advocates of the youth. I'd say the youth are the now generation, they're no longer future. Very important, and WOOF is doing that, a lot of youth engagements as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Arthur, it's your turn. Yes, thank you, Dahlia.
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter. If you think I can speak at the end, no problem. But anyway, my point is one word. It's called collaboration. Collaboration means two things: cooperation, and laboratory. I mean, this term singularizes a little bit this idea that breaking the silos. I am from university, but I need to confess that sometimes the university is another silo, okay? Not only between the different departments of a university, but even between universities and other universities and etc. That means that I support totally this opening of the university, but try to think that most of the technological innovation is the social innovation. And breaking the silo between institutions is maybe one of the toughest tasks we have facing, okay? Between academia and the government, between the government and the companies, and between the companies and the NGOs. I think the idea is, what is then the art or the wisdom to put it all together? And the wisdom is because we need to common transitions. This is not one, this is a common transition. Urbanization is a big issue. No one continent can solve by their own. Then we need technologies of cooperation. This is my point. And we are really optimistic. We went to the Summit of the Future of the United Nations in last September, and they approved an interesting resolution called the Pact for the Future. And for the first time in this Pact of the Future, there is a whole section on science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. And if you read that attentively, this resolution, inside, there is also a promotion of indigenous knowledge, local and territorial knowledge. And this is important because it's a windows of opportunity on putting all together the different kind of knowledges we have in order to solving this problem. And this is why I think we are beginning to live in an interesting moment where, at least intellectually, these barriers between science and technology, between technology and digital and indigenous knowledge are beginning to break it down, because all this knowledge we need to put in together, okay? And the next step is how we envision some kind of institutions that can allow this collaboration. This is what we call about these living labs. Maybe you can put another name. I know, for example, that in Africa, there is a big association called the Afri Labs. And this is perfect. I mean, because the metaphor is we are living in a planet laboratory, or in a moment that we don't know what will be the outcome, but what we know is we need to collaborate in order to put our best of our efforts in a seamless structure that allows us to innovate and to recover the innovation also in the past. And this is the most difficult thing, and if we can collaborate in this kind of task, we'll be happy.
Thank you very much, Artur.
Okay.
I destroyed the microphone, and that's why my gratitude was late. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Yeah, you're very right. Let's conclude and give also the audience a little bit of time. In 2 words, Kanak, what would be your tip? What was your main recommendation from the work that ITLE is doing in Africa? Partnerships. It's okay. It's okay. Dahlia.
I would say that we need more sustainable governance for the water sector and the urban resilient cities. We need to have incorporate sustainable and more policies and legislation for the water and sanitation and the urban resilient. Also, we need to, as I said, that we need to build trust between all the actors to come together and work together, not to everyone working in silos, and we have dissipating the energy. We need to have one to work together. Also, to little bit to think outside of the box. So we need to develop and maybe implement more innovative ideas to cope with what's going on around us, and more action than words.
Thank you. And their cities come into play where we really need to experiment, to try it out, to failure, to learn, and to just do and be active. That's totally true. Yeah, I think from our side, this was a lot of information, a lot of wisdom. Thank you very much for sharing it and experience. Are there other questions from the audience or any discussion points? Oh, so so many.
Okay, first, thank you all for the great discussion. And I'll just have very quickly, because I know there's not much time. The 2 esteemed panelists, you talked about the importance of education and having it be practical. Within an urban setting, I was involved in an experiential learning class. We went to an impoverished neighborhood in Old Cairo in order to establish a rooftop garden. Basically, it was an experiment in urban farming to see, because again, especially when it comes to urban settings, and I thank Dr. Artur for establishing the rural-urban connection, because at the end of the day, we expand urban context. And what happens is you see food poverty in return, because there are food deserts around, because there are not major food production. And the problem is our project, at the end of the day, we couldn't establish it because it was perceived by the government as a threat, because the neighborhood itself was planned to be demolished and the people would be evicted. So in that regard, academia would be working on developing the neighborhood and trying to instill and anchor the community positively around something good like urban farming and community farming. But what happens is we're faced with the big government. So in that regard, I think there is a need to connect education initiatives with the government so that we wouldn't work a whole semester and get the hopes up of the community and then end up dashing it all, because again, we have a big organization we can't stand against. And in that regard, there is a need for democratic representation and governmental liaison within the cities, within the education institution, especially that in our case, we sensed there was a community fatigue, because a certain slum or an impoverished area would receive a lot of people like us, postgrad students, researchers, and every time we do needs assessment, then we leave without doing an actual impact in the community. And this is a major issue, because later on they mistrust and distrust researchers, because they feel that we are there to do papers and publish and get recognition conferences, but they get nothing in return. And I also wanted to stress on Dr. Dahlia's connection when it comes to water. And I see it in Egypt, the community-based initiatives, because some areas, they have problems with the water quality in the drinking water grid. So what happens is people will come together and pool funds, usually around a charity or an NGO, to install filters. And you could see the impact of the reduction of cases of liver failure and kidney failure within the community because of the installation of filters. And this usually is done by community-based solidarity and community-based philanthropy. So in that regard, we need to stress on that, but that in itself requires giving freedoms to communities. Because in many cases, if you are in a heavily regulated country, like I would say like Egypt, the mere fact of organization and pooling funds could get you in trouble. So we need to do this when it comes to the urban area. And my last commentary about indigenous communities, because you talk about indigenous communities, in many cases, indigenous communities within a rural context, they are self-sufficient. But then as they move to the cities and become urbanized, they lose this self-efficiency. So I think when we need to plan the urban context, we need to focus on how we could make urban communities as self-sufficient as possible. We have seen microgrids for energy production and energy management when it comes to renewables. What if we have microgrids for community-based urban farming? What if we have microgrids for water management from a community-based angle? So again, the self-sufficiency part within urban community could be stressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this important intervention. And I know I promised someone to intervene here also regarding water management. Mr. Amar El-Nagar, do you want to
actually
to conclude?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Actually, Dr. Dahlia already mentioned the most the point that I want to mention.
Okay.
But actually, we did the same regarding the water control regarding the network. Now we are implementing a very huge project under Arab contractor company for facility management for detecting the leakage of the whole network under Cairo. And we are facing a huge problem, not only in Egypt, by the way, it's in the whole world, especially in London also they have the same, the old cities have a lot of leakages. And one of the most important and resources here now in the whole countries, the water. That's what we are putting now in the glass to drink. It's very important. Water, it's very important for all of us now. And to catch each drop of the water from everywhere, it's a demand. No way. We have to concentrate to do that. In our contractor company for facility management, we did this, and we did a cooperation with another partner from Europe to support us in that. You mentioned, Dr. Dahlia, the very important sensors that detect the leakage. And we are using the MPIoT system for networking. We have a cooperation with We company for telecommunication to catch this. And by the way, we need funds for that project to make it more efficient in implementation. That's the main point. You did this maybe in Kuwait. Now we are doing this in Egypt. And we are also looking for implement this in the whole Africa. We are here, our contractor company for facility management, to implement this in the whole region, because water now is the demand. So thank you so much.
It could be like a south-south cooperation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, last but not least, I want to thank again this powerful panel here. Thank you very much for being here and participating and sharing your knowledge. And
We have more time, so
we have more time. more than efficient. We were more than efficient. Perfect. So we are still open for questions.
And now that we have time and I have a microphone, just by chance, I wanted to highlight a little bit of what the conversation has been developing. We've heard a lot about collaboration and co-creation, and we heard a lot about community-based approaches. And this question is open to everyone, but maybe also a little bit to Artur. If you know about some examples that you work with from the government perspective, in terms of how the government creates innovative mechanisms to bring together either in commissions or boards or new structures or new agencies within the governments, either national or local, to get together the stakeholders. Because it's very important to discuss these topics, and it's really, really interesting to be here and hearing everything. But it's also very pressing for governments to put this forward and put it on front. I can share also a couple of experiences. I just stumped into it. The government of Brazil, for example, has created recently in the past years a structure within their national government, working together with 3 different ministries to get together, of course, the ministries that have a stake in urban development, in climate action as well, in energy efficiency, but also, of course, all the private sector and all the different stakeholders that have a say in the city. So it's really interesting to see, and maybe if you know about any initiative that you would like to share on the governments, either national, regional, or local, trying to put forward this kind of like collaboration labs or spaces for innovation.
Yes. Yes.
Please, Artur.
Yes, my experience with the government of Senegal is through this kind of funds. It's called FEDESUD, and this fund is from the government, but it's paid by the telecommunication operators, because they have forced to put 0.3% of the GDP of these operators in this fund, but this fund is from the government. And the governments came to Barcelona asking us for this kind of living labs approach, because they want to develop this universal access, and the model of living labs could fit this kind of that means that maybe in the government and the normal institutions are not only uniform. There are some windows of opportunity in some entrance in university, in governments, that you can take advantage, for example, for this kind of foundations. It's not the whole government, but it's a window they need to open, because they want to achieve a goal that for that goal, they need to innovate, not only digitally, but socially. And they come to a living labs through this initiative.
Okay, thanks a lot, Artur. Yes, so I have 2 case studies examples which I was directly involved in. So I was part of the National Plastic Action Plan for Nigeria. I was part of the stakeholders. And this is actually led by the Federal Ministry of Environment. So these are the national level, supported by the World Economic Forum and the GPAC, the Global Plastic Action. So that is one specific case study of government taking action on plastic pollution across the country. Then we now have a policy document. And apart from having that document, prior to having the document and after, it's been a lot of various pan-sectoral stakeholder engagements that has literally gone into it. So academia, I represented academia. We had private sector recycling initiatives. We had non-profits, CSOs. We had informal sector, those who are actually involved in picking plastics. And so, I mean, they really tried to cut across, and so that was really a clear initiative. It's just starting, so the low-hanging fruit will actually see the reduction in plastic waste, but that's one critical thing that the government is really onboarding. Another one is another initiative which I talked about earlier. This was supported by the US Department of State. It's an air quality management recommendations, but this is at the state level, so at the local state level. So it was the PI it's a Pan-African, East and West African thing. But we have a PI in Lagos. I'm not the PI. I lead the policy output or engagement aspects. And this is actually, there's an optic. The state government owns the projects. So through their Ministry of the Environmental Protection Agency. So earlier in June, we had the Clean Air Forum. It's a Pan-African thing, and it was hosted by Lagos. And the state government took ownership of that forum. So that's one thing that at least two clear areas that I'm involved in and I can speak to. There's still a lot that we do really. So I'm not saying that these are all, but I'm saying that there's clear initiatives of governments putting its foot forward. So like I said, it's just the private sector. We want to also take ownership of some of this kind of initiatives.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And I think also this is in a way a call for everyone and for the UTM as well to provide this message and help cities get this message and local authorities to be more active and in the front line of creating the safe spaces to make the transformations that we need with that collaboration. So thank you for sharing your kind examples.
Can I proceed?
Yes. Yes, please.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to share my experience again on the examples of government participation in the efforts of bringing stakeholder engagement, a case of Kenya, because I come from Kenya, where I think the government has made deliberate effort of entrenching citizen participation into the constitution to the extent that decisions made have to involve the citizen. At the local level, at the municipal level, we have the Citizen Forum, which is entrenched in the Urban Areas and the Cities Act. And it is well elaborated in the Constitution, which includes members of the academia. We have members of professional bodies within the urban area. We have the private sector, the business community within the urban area, with the sole responsibility of ensuring that the community or the local level is involved in decision making in the urban areas. I think this is important. It's something that we cannot run away from. But I wanted also to add on to something that I think we need to look at critically even as we discuss issues of urban and the challenges and involvement of the stakeholders. And it is something that is in relation to what Artur had presented on the transition from rural to urban, because this is very common in our where we come from back at home. Why? Because the way we approach urbanization is different from probably where it is approached in Europe, for instance. A lot of rural-urban migration is happening. And rural-urban migration is happening, and I think the focus should start to shift from migrating to rural to urban areas, to focusing on development or empowering the rural areas, so that we can reduce pressure on urban infrastructure. And the consequence of migration from rural to urban brings with it the challenge that my colleague was not able to solve in Egypt, for instance. When we migrate, for instance, as we are in an agricultural community, so when we migrate, we are losing manpower in the rural area that is able to produce food. And this food is supposed to feed majority of the food we produce is taken to the urban areas to feed those who are staying in the urban areas. So what do you do effectively? A lot of people have migrated to urban areas. The energetic young men who are supposed to be producing food for consumption or even to feed the urban have moved. So food production goes down. Vast majority of people have moved to urban areas. Consequently, what happens, we probably need to think two things. Empower the local community so that people are empowered at the local level. They don't think of migrating to urban areas to look for jobs, white-collar jobs. Or alternatively, if people have to migrate, then you have to think of urban agriculture, so that those who are in urban areas are still thinking of production of food. And I think this needs to be looked at deliberately by thinking policy. I mean, the bureaucratic processes, as Elli mentioned by, was it doctor from Lagos, from Nigeria? The processes, some of these processes are very cumbersome in our systems in Africa. That's something we have to agree. And some of them are new. There are some concepts that probably are new, and government takes time to do it, to get to realize there are things that are able to even help the people. And I think tie the two. Let us think of, as we discussed this, let's think of rural-urban migration and think of urban agriculture. But again, I must say that from where I come from, I think there's very deliberate effort by the government to ensure that the community or the local citizen are involved in the processes of even doing budgets, or for at urban areas. When we're talking of urban areas, still I think where I come from, currently the government is grappling with coming up with a policy for urban fund. These are still gaps that some of things are work in progress. The government thinks the future is urban, and as part of the future, we need to think of do we have a deliberate effort to have set aside a budget in national budget or at the local municipal level budget, specifically targeting addressing urbanization issues. So I think that is what I wanted to add on the discussion on the stakeholders and this.
Okay.
Who is in charge, Karen? Am I or are you?
You, but I can just complement a little bit that idea, because I think at the end we ended up talking about education for the local communities and for the citizens, but also education for the governments, and education to understand that we need to break these silos, and it's really relevant that we take this sort of urbanization as a pedagogic process as well, and breaking those barriers that we find internally within the local authorities and also the different levels of government and also in the community. So thank you for your comment.
And I would like to contribute with two ideas or suggestions as a participant now, not as a moderator here. We talked about education, so and the SDGs. I don't know if you're aware, but you're sure. In parallel of this, the inner development goals have been established. So for the future skills and soft skills that people will need in the future. So like foresight, like empathy, like very many attributes and skills that would maybe help in the educational system also because we also need to transform as human beings, and we were really triggered into directions of profit making and careers and whatever it is. But we need to start to share and to be more empathetic and more human. Thank you. Yes. And another suggestion, another idea which came up, Temitope, because you said socioeconomic, and so there is the trend now that cities embark on changing the economic system. I don't know if you're aware of the donut economics by Kate Raworth. Many cities in Europe are starting. Vienna is starting now to implement and to work on this. So it is really the ecological ceilings that is there, and the socioeconomic foundations that need to be provided in the city. It is very simple. It's very plausible, You can argument with this. Everyone will understand it. And it gets really human and understandable for everyone that we need to go into this direction. So just my contribution to this. And I will provide all the information, all the data in our platform. And there will be a group for the African region. I will invite all of you to be part of this, and we will continue the discussion and the collaboration, I promise. But please also from your side be active there. I will be there. We will all be there, and you can find us there. So we have 1 year to go through the project, but the platform hopefully will stay for long for you. So let's start working together in this direction. Thank you very much.